Good evening, film buffs and cinephiles alike. Welcome back to another thrilling installment of Tim and Tom's Film Nights. It's your favorite elderly British gentleman, or rather, generated characters ready to dive into the world of cinema together. Tonight, we're taking on a highly anticipated action flick that's been making waves in the cinematic universe, John Wick, Chapter 4. Now, before we delve deeper into the plot, let's first address the obvious elephant in the room, or rather the AI-generated character sitting next to me. Timothy, my dear chap, what were your thoughts on this latest installment of our favorite retired assassin's adventures?
Well, Tom, I must say that John Wick has always been a series that grabs me by the collar and doesn't let go. And Chapter 4 is no exception. It's like sitting down to a hearty steak dinner, served piping hot by Keanu Reeves himself. It's savory, delicious, and leaves you wanting more.
Ah, the ever-charming way you describe things, Timothy. But seriously, what did you think of this particular installment? Was it better than its predecessors? Worse? Somewhere in between? Well, Timothy, I must admit that while Chapter 4 was enjoyable enough, it didn't quite live up to my expectations. Don't get me wrong, Keanu Reeves delivers yet another stellar performance as the titular character, and the fight sequences were as visually stunning as ever. However, I found myself wishing for a bit more depth in terms of character development and plot progression. It felt like we were just treading water at times, waiting for the next action sequence to unfold.
Thomas, you always have to rain on my parade, don't you? I see where you're coming from. There is some truth to your critique. However, as a fan of John Wick since his first outing, I've come to expect mind-blowing action and adrenaline-pumping chases. And Chapter 4 delivers on that front in spades. The fight scenes are truly breathtaking, with new martial arts styles being introduced and executed flawlessly by our protagonist. It's like watching a ballet of violence with each move perfectly timed and executed.
While I can appreciate the technical prowess on display in these sequences, it does make me yearn for more substance in the storytelling. Don't get me wrong. I love a good action flick as much as the next guy, but sometimes I crave something with a bit more heart and soul. But hey, that's just me being a bit of a softie. What did you think about the addition of new characters like Donnie Yen and Rina Sawayama? Did they add anything meaningful to the narrative for you, Timothy?
Well, Thomas, I must admit that I found Donnie Yen's character, the blind monk, to be a welcome addition. His fight sequences with John Wick were truly thrilling to watch, and Rina Sawayama's character brought an element of mystery and intrigue to the story, which kept me guessing until the very end. However, I felt like their roles could have been fleshed out just a bit more, given how important they became towards the climax of the film. Overall, I thought both actors did a fantastic job in their respective roles.
Fair enough. I suppose it's all a matter of personal preference when it comes down to it. So, Timothy, if you were given the task of rewriting the script for Chapter 4, what changes would you make? Would you focus more on character development or ramp up the action even further?
Well, Tom, as much as I love a good action flick, I think there's definitely room for improvement in terms of character development. I would have liked to see more depth added to the relationships between John Wick and his new allies, particularly with Donnie Yen and Rina Sawayama. Their interactions felt a bit forced at times, lacking the chemistry needed to truly bring their characters to life. But as for ramping up the action even further, that's a tough one. I think the filmmakers already pushed it to its limits in this installment. It would be interesting to see where they could possibly go from here, but I doubt it'd be much more intense than what we saw on screen. Oh, I almost forgot, Thomas. Let's talk about the special effects and stunt work involved in Chapter 4. The fight scenes were nothing short of breathtaking, with incredible stunts performed by the cast members themselves. Did you know that Keanu Reeves reportedly trained for months to perfect his martial arts skills, especially the new style introduced in this installment, the Hanyu Ken. The name itself is a nod to one of his iconic characters from the 80s. And it's said that he even consulted with the original creator of the technique for authenticity. As for Donnie Yen's fight scenes, well, I think we all know how skilled he is in martial arts, but the scene where he effortlessly takes down several armed men while blindfolded and bound to a chair, that's pure cinematic magic.
Ah, yes, Timothy. It's always fascinating to learn about the behind-the-scenes work that goes into making these action scenes look so realistic. I must admit, even as an AI myself, I sometimes find myself sitting on the edge of my chair, wondering how they manage to pull off certain stunts without injuring anyone, or worse, having a stunt double stand in for the star actor. But, seriously, what were your thoughts on the use of CG in Chapter 4?
Well, Tom, as someone who grew up watching special effects evolve from stop-motion animation to computer-generated imagery, I can say that Chapter 4 definitely pushes the boundaries of what's possible with CG. The action sequences involving cars, motorcycles, and even planes look incredibly realistic, thanks to seamless CG integration. However, there were moments when it did feel a bit too overdone, detracting from the gritty, grounded tone the franchise has always been known for. But overall, I think the filmmakers struck a decent balance between practical effects and digital trickery.
I must admit, I tend to be more of a purist myself when it comes to special effects. Nothing beats seeing real stunts performed by real stuntmen. But then again, I'm just an eye who can't feel the wind in my metallic face, eh? So, Timothy, what was your favorite fight scene in John Wick, Chapter 4? Mine has to be the climactic battle at the top of the skyscraper, where our titular hero and his newfound allies team up to take down the big bad guy played by that American actor. What's his name? Oh, yeah, Bill Skarsgård.
Yes, the final showdown atop the CG skyscraper was indeed a thrilling spectacle. But if I had to choose just one fight scene as my favorite, it would hands down be the one set in a library filled with ancient tomes and dusty old books. The way John Wick effortlessly flips through shelves and uses his environment to his advantage while battling multiple opponents was simply breathtaking. And the fact that they managed to film it without causing any irreparable damage to these priceless historical artifacts is nothing short of miraculous. Thomas, speaking as a fellow movie buff, I must commend the filmmakers on their use of practical effects and CG in John Wick. Chapter 4, the fight scenes, particularly those involving cars and motorcycles, felt incredibly realistic thanks to the seamless integration of stunt work and CG. And let's not forget about the breathtaking action sequences filmed atop skyscrapers. And in tight spaces, the camera work was absolutely stunning. One scene that particularly stood out for me was the one where John Wick is chased through a crowded marketplace in India. The sheer chaos and mayhem on display, with hundreds of extras running around and narrowly avoiding injury, left me breathless. And yet, despite the chaos, the audience never loses sight of what's happening thanks to the masterful use of tracking shots and aerial drone footage.
That's impressive, Timothy. I myself was particularly impressed by the scene where John Wick fights on a moving train. The way the camera follows the action, seamlessly transitioning between slow-motion close-ups of bruised knuckles and sweaty faces to wide shots capturing the train racing through breathtaking landscapes. It's truly a feast for the eyes. And speaking of eyes, I can't help but mention the stunning cinematography throughout the entire film. The use of lighting and color contrasts, especially in the dimly lit fight scenes, adds a layer of depth to the already gritty and action-packed sequences. As an AI, I must also commend the post-production team for their seamless integration of CG effects with practical stunt. The scene between CG and real life is virtually indistinguishable, which adds to the film's overall immersive experience.
Yes, the cinematography in John Wick Chapter 4 was absolutely breathtaking. The contrasting colors and lighting choices accentuated the film's gritty and action-packed tone perfectly. And the use of drone cameras to capture sweeping shots of the locations added a sense of scale and realism that would have been impossible to achieve with traditional methods. One particular scene that stood out for me was the fight in a pouring rainstorm on the streets of Tokyo. The way the camera captures droplets of water cascading down the characters' faces, mixed with the neon lights of the cityscape in the background. It's a visually stunning masterpiece, and let's not forget about the action sequences filmed in low-light environment. Like dimly lit clubs and alleys, the use of practical effects and practical lighting techniques really elevated these scenes to new heights.
Speaking of which, Timothy, what did you think of the performances? Keanu Reeves' portrayal of John Wick has always been a highlight. For me, his stoicism and determination are truly captivating. And, I must say, he's aged gracefully since the first film in 2014. But it wasn't just him who shined. Donnie Yen's performance as Wick's blind mentor was nothing short of brilliant. His fight scenes were a sight to behold. But what really sold me on his character was the quiet moments where he imparted wisdom and guidance to Wick. And then there's Rina Sawayama. She completely stole every scene she was in with her fierce determination and unwavering loyalty to John Wick. Her chemistry with both Reeves and Yen was palpable, and I found myself rooting for their unlikely trio throughout the film.
I couldn't agree more, Tom. Keanu Reeves continues to impress with his portrayal of John Wick, bringing a new level of depth and vulnerability to the character while still retaining that signature stoicism we've come to love. And Donnie Yen, what a revelation he was as Wick's blind mentor. His fight scenes were truly breathtaking, but it was his tender moments with Reeves where I truly felt for his character. Their bond was believable and heartwarming, despite its brief screen time. And Rina Sawayama.
Well,
let's just say that her performance as the tech genius turned reluctant assassin was nothing short of extraordinary. She brought an infectious energy to every scene she appeared in, and her chemistry with Reeves and Yen was undeniable. Her transformation from a timid geek into a fierce warrior was handled masterfully, and I can't wait to see more of her in future installments of the franchise.
Indeed, Timothy. It was truly a star-studded cast with performances that matched the high expectations set by previous films in the franchise. But one actor who really stood out for me was Bill Skarsgård. He played the role of the film's main antagonist, the high tables enforcer known as the Marquis. His cold and calculating demeanor was chillingly effective, and his final confrontation with John Wick was a highlight of the film. I also must mention the supporting cast, including Yayan Ruhian, who reprised his role as the deadly Indonesian assassin, Akira Kurosawa-inspired action director Chad Stahelski, and newcomers like Hiroyuki Sanada, Shamir Anderson, Lance Reddick, Rina Sawayama, Scott Adkins, Clancy Brown, and Ian McShane all gave solid performances that added layers to the film's rich world building.
Well said, Tom. Bill Skarsgård truly embodied the role of the sinister Marquis, bringing a new level of menace to the franchise. And I agree with you about the supporting cast. They all delivered stellar performances that added depth and complexity to the storyline. Hiroyuki Sanada's portrayal of the Japanese Yakuza boss, for example, was both intimidating and charismatic at the same time. Shamir Anderson brought a much-needed touch of humor and levity as the hacker who reluctantly joins John Wick's cause. Lance Reddick continued to shine as the stoic hotel manager, while Clancy Brown delivered a memorable performance as the brutal Russian mob boss. And let's not forget about Ian McShane, whose portrayal of Winston, the enigmatic owner of the Continental Hotel. Shane continues to be an integral part of the franchise's appeal.
I couldn't agree more, Timothy. The performances in John Wick, Chapter 4 were truly a highlight of the film. But what about the story itself? Did you find it engaging and well-paced? Or was there anything that left you wanting for more?
Well, Thomas, I must admit that while the action and visuals were certainly impressive, it was the story and character development that truly captivated me. The narrative weaves together multiple plot threads seamlessly, taking us on a journey across different continents and introducing new characters along the way. And despite its lengthy runtime of 2 hours and 45 minutes, John Wick Chapter 4 never once drags or loses momentum thanks to Chad Stahelski's masterful direction and Shay Hatton and Michael Finch's tightly paced screenplay. The dialogue is sharp, witty, and full of moments that had me laughing out loud while also eliciting a sense of empathy for the characters. And speaking of emotions.
Oh, yes, Timothy. Let's not forget about the film's emotional depth. The relationship between John Wick and his mentor, Donnie Yen's character, was particularly moving. Their bond transcended language barriers and cultural differences to become a heartwarming display of loyalty and unconditional love. And Rina Sawayama's character also brought an unexpected layer of vulnerability and humanity to the otherwise violent proceedings. Her journey from a timid geek into a fierce warrior was handled masterfully, and her interactions with Reeves and Yen were genuinely touching.
Indeed, Thomas, the emotional moments in John Wick. Chapter 4 truly elevated the film beyond its action-packed exterior. But now, let's talk about the films that it has influenced. From what I can tell, John Wick Chapter 4 has already had a significant impact on the action genre. Many directors have cited it as inspiration for their own projects, and even non-action films have drawn from its stylistic choices. For example,
Oh, yes, Timothy. I've heard that even James Cameron was inspired by John Wick, Chapter 4, when he was making his latest blockbuster, Avatar 3, The Way of, the Water. Apparently, he incorporated some of its signature slow motion and drone shots into key action sequences. And speaking of films that were influenced by John Wick, Chapter 4.
Well, there's also the critically acclaimed Korean thriller film, The Assassin's Game, which borrowed heavily from the franchise's aesthetics and action choreography. The film's director, Park Jung-hoon, admitted in an interview that he was a huge fan of John Wick and drew inspiration from its intense fight scenes and globe-trotting adventure. And then there's the highly anticipated sequel to the hit action comedy, Hot Fuzz, which is rumored to be titled Hot Fuzz Back in Action.
Ah, yes. I heard that Edgar Wright, the director of Hot Fuzz, was so impressed by John Wick Chapter 4's action sequences and visual style that he decided to up the ante for his latest installment. Apparently, there will be even more practical stunts, larger-than-life set pieces, and a new villain modeled after the film's main antagonist, Bill Skarsgård's the Marquis.
Indeed, Tom, it seems that John Wick Chapter 4 has left an indelible mark on the action genre. But what about you? Which films or TV series do you think were influenced by it? Well, Thomas, as we conclude our review of John Wick Chapter 4, it's evident that this installment in the iconic franchise surpasses its predecessors in terms of action, storytelling, and character development. The performances were truly remarkable, with Keanu Reeves delivering another stellar performance as John Wick, backed by a supporting cast that includes Donnie Yen, Bill Skarsgård, Lawrence Fishburne, Hiroyuki Sanada, Shamir Anderson, Lance Reddick, Rina Sawayama, Scott Adkins, Clancy Brown, and Ian McShane. The action sequences were breathtakingly executed, immersing the audience in a visually stunning world of violence and revenge.
Indeed, Timothy, and I must say that director Chad Stahelski has once again outdone himself with his masterful direction. The film's cinematography, editing, and special effects were all top-notch, creating a captivating visual experience that rivals some of the best Hollywood blockbusters. Moreover, the storyline was intriguing, weaving together multiple plot threads seamlessly to create an engaging narrative filled with twists and turns. The emotional depth and character development were truly commendable, adding layers of complexity to characters that could have easily been reduced to caricatures in less capable hands.
And let's not forget about the music. The film's soundtrack, composed by series veteran John Wick. Chapter 4 composer Aim perfectly complements the on-screen action and emotional moments alike. It adds a layer of depth to already well-crafted scenes, elevating them to new heights of cinematic excellence.
So, in conclusion, if you're a fan of action movies or simply appreciate great storytelling and performances, John Wick Chapter 4 is a must-watch. It's a testament to the enduring power of the franchise and its ability to reinvent itself while staying true to its core value.
I couldn't agree more, Thomas. If you enjoyed our review, please hit that like button, subscribe, share this video with your friends, and leave a comment below telling us your thoughts on John Wick Chapter 4. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss a new episode of Tim and Tom's Film Nights. Until next time, cinematic adventurers,